Hello and welcome. I'm your host, author Ryan M. Oliver, and this is the Mighty Books Podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Mighty Books Podcast. Today with me, I have Valari Westeren. See, now, Valari, she earned a BA in creative writing and capped her university studies with a 96-page honors thesis analyzing 6 well-known female fantasy characters across literature and film. And her thesis is still being downloaded over like 200 times a month. That's quite a bit. She writes science fiction and fantasy grounded in real-life moral complexity that still points towards hope. Having lived on 3 different continents growing up, she uses her diverse life experiences as inspiration for her world building. Valari, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
Good. Thank you for coming on the show. Today we're talking about your brand new book, which is super, like just launched. What date?
It launched December 5th, so this
Okay.
Tuesday.
Okay. Awesome. What is the title of this wonderful new book you have out?
Yeah, the book is called Voices of the Future, Stories of Family and Fearlessness. It's a student showcase of 9 different short stories written by me and 8 of my classmates in the author conservatory.
Oh, cool. Okay. So 1 of 9, you said.
That's right.
That's awesome. Okay. So your section, what is the synopsis of your story?
Yeah, so my short story is apocalyptic. It's in a setting where savage plants have gained sentience and they're waging war against humans. To defeat them, world governments are going to destroy them with a nuclear holocaust. And the protagonist is a 15-year-old girl who has 5 hours until the bunkers close, and she needs to find her little brother who is missing in the forest of savage plants.
Oh my gosh. That sounds pretty interesting. So what caused the creation or the idea of savage plants taking over? Where did that come from?
Yeah, it's funny. About 30 minutes from my house, there's an actual nursery, a plant nursery called Savage Plants. And so I think that phrase just stuck in my head. Like that's not something I see every day. Um,
Yeah. I wonder if the owners' names are savage.
I never thought about that. Who
Yeah.
knows? Yeah, I've never
Well,
actually visited. I kind of want to now,
you
but
should
also I'm scared.
you should, and then you could say, hey, this story is based off of the name of your nursery.
True, yeah.
They
I
might
definitely
really
should
like
visit
that.
sometime. Yeah.
They
Yeah, that'd be fun.
That might really be cool. So I saw, was there a theme to the anthology?
Yeah, so the subtitle does say stories of family and fearlessness. Like
Okay.
originally the idea was to have different stories that centered around family, though originally I was going to be in a different anthology that centered around trees. So that's also where the savage plants came in, but I was moved around
Okay.
last minute, but it works because there's definitely family since my story centers on a sister-brother relationship.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, are
Yeah.
the other ones fiction or are they nonfiction? The other stories?
Yeah, they're all fiction, most of them fantasy, a few science fiction, and 1 contemporary.
Okay, okay, very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, how long did it take you to write this story then? Or I guess how long is it too? Is by word count, maybe if you know that.
Yeah. Yeah. Each story, mine included, is about 10,000 words. So on the long side for a short story.
Yeah, yeah. What is
Yeah.
the general average of a short story? 'Cause I just don't know.
I want to say around 4,000, 5,000 words. Like normally, if you submit a short story to like an online website or something, they'll cap it at 4,000 words or so. So
Okay.
yeah, 10,000 is pretty lengthy as far as a short story goes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what I can't remember like for novellas. I know no bigger than I want to say 40,000, like 35,000 is kind of pushing it on the novella side. So are you kind of ranging in the almost a small novella?
I guess so. Like I know there's
Yeah,
a
I
subcategory called
don't know.
novelette. So it's supposed to
Oh,
be
okay.
between, I don't exactly know.
There is someone somewhere that has this knowledge categorized in their brain, and it's probably on Google, but I don't want to rely on Google all the time. That's just
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
yeah. So how long did it take you to write the story?
It's been in development for about a year.
Okay, okay.
So
I know we were in communications. It must have been over a year and a half now. I think I believe we were talking about your story a long time ago.
We were actually talking about a different story. Like I had written a novella that was
Oh,
about
okay.
40,000 words, but I pivoted away from that. I'm now trying to expand that story into a novel and pitch it traditionally. But yeah, I went ahead with this completely different story that's
Okay.
shorter.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so
Yeah.
we'll put a pin in your future works. I definitely want to touch base with that because anytime I hear someone's doing an anthology, it's like a great like kind of get your foot in the door of writing a bigger because you're just getting you're used to how the publications work and everything like that, and
Yeah.
getting more comfortable with the idea of sharing your work, which is just a huge step in the right direction
Hmm.
as someone who's interested in writing.
Yeah.
Now I'm curious because I know how publishing a novel works just solo by yourself, working with the editor and then, the publisher and all that fun stuff. But how does it work with publishing an anthology? Like a lot more complicated? Was it pretty simple? I mean, can you kind of go into the details of that?
Yeah. I would say I don't know if this would count as more complicated than an actual novel, but probably the biggest thing that I was like, this is a little weird is I didn't actually read the other short stories until like further down the process. Like I received an e-version of the entire book and I was supposed to look at it through typos. I actually was supposed to look at just my own short story, but there was miscommunication, so I read everything. And so that was the first time I got to read my classmates' stories, which was super exciting. I just kind of wish I had read them earlier in the process as a way of, both increasing camaraderie and for giving me a bit better idea of, okay, what's the book as a whole about? Like, I know my short story, but like, how does it fit in? What are the larger themes? Like, what ties it in all together? So, yeah, it was a little disappointing that I got to read the other short stories so late in the process, but otherwise it was basically the same as launching a novel. Like you
Yeah.
write the first draft, you get developmental edits on it, you get line edits later, you do a final proofreading pass, and there's the cover design and all the things. So otherwise it was fairly normal for a book launch.
Okay. Well, so because I'm curious on how, like, because there's got to be someone in charge of the process of, organizing all the different stories, putting them in order on however they wanted to, decide to do it, book cover, communicating with each author, who's in charge of this whole project, or did you guys work collectively on it?
Yeah, since this was again a student showcase of the Author Conservatory, which is a
Okay.
3-year college alternative program I've been part of, it was mostly a couple instructors in charge of that. Mostly our instructor, Joanne Bischoff. She's both an indie published and traditionally published author of historical romance. And so she was mostly in charge of figuring out all the things because she's walked the indie publishing road before and done quite well at it. So,
Sure. Okay,
yeah.
very cool. Now, is this a yearly thing they do with this conservatory, or is this more so like a culminating project or something like that?
They are going to release new anthologies about twice a year, I think. And
Oh,
this is their very first one.
oh, cool.
Yeah,
That's
so
awesome. Well,
we got
because
all the major hiccups, but it'll be
oh,
easier for students down the road. It'll be
yeah,
fine.
well, yeah. You kind of guys are the guinea pigs, which I think is kind of
Yeah.
the exciting part because you're the first, you're like the pioneers in this
Yeah,
particular instance. That's really neat, though. So
it is.
that's how long has the conservatory been around for? I think you're in the same conservatory as Sequoia Branham.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, it started actually right in 2020. Like I was one of the unlucky college students who had to graduate university in 2020.
Oh,
And the
sorry.
day after I graduated, I enrolled in Author Conservatory.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's really neat. And that they've been around for a little while, or are they pretty new?
They're pretty new. Like again, I'm one of their very first students. So
Okay,
I
so
joined in
2020.
2020. That's when they started.
Okay. Yeah. So were you in the same group as Sequoia or in different groups?
Uh, it's hard to keep track of. Like back in the beginning, there wasn't so much emphasis on cohorts. Like I
Okay.
think they were letting in new students every week or so. Now there's more of a cohort. Like everyone joins in January or whatever. But Sequoia and I are in the same year. We interact a lot together. So Sure, I guess we're in the same cohort,
Okay.
basically.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah, because I know you
Yeah,
were telling me your guys are different locales. You're in Pacific Northwest and she's down in Texas. So
that's all right.
yeah, and the one good thing, one of the good things that did come out of COVID was the fact that we got to have more, Zoom calls, and we can connect with people from all over the world. So that's really a great thing to do. Actually, something I was curious. Did you guys ever get on a call with all the authors, storytellers for this anthology, or you guys get in the same room? Are you guys close together?
We are not close together. One of us lives in Scotland,
Oh
so
man.
we're we're not going to ever be in the same room, at least for a
Oh,
while.
yeah.
But we actually do have an online launch party coming up next week on the 14th. So hopefully we'll all be there
Heck
as
yeah.
a way of celebrating this book launch.
Yeah. Celebrate this huge promotion or huge project you guys completed. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
So what's the book launch looking like? I mean, pretty large. Is it going to be more than just online? You guys doing some in-person stuff? Or at least
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, we've all had our own individual launch parties. I had mine Tuesday evening, which was the day of the launch, and had about 25 people show up, which was good for a private event.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I was able to hand out books, sell a few more, sign them all. It was a really fun time.
Oh yeah. And nothing beats just, telling you how good your stuff is.
I know. It was,
Coming
oh my
together
goodness, a
and
party for me. What
enjoying.
is this?
Yeah, and celebrating your triumphs, and it takes a lot of work and time to get something like this off the ground, especially with so many people,
Mm,
working on a project. But it's good stuff. That good information or good kind of workflow is great to have. The
yeah,
energy, I should say.
yeah.
What kind of feedback have you gotten from your story?
Yeah. So my story in particular is, you could probably tell from the blurb, a bit darker and definitely on the darker side compared to most of the stories in the collection. So at first I was a little nervous about how people would take that, but I've actually gotten really great feedback from a lot of people who are like, this was darker, this was creepier, but I loved it because of that. So it's also been a great process of, okay, I'm not crazy. There are people who enjoy what I write and I can keep doing this. It's been really encouraging.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. And I think honestly, an anthology, it's kind of like I kind of equate it to an album. Okay. I mean, you gotta
Uh-huh.
have you have the faster, more, the dance to it songs, and you have the more I'm going to kind of be pondering the words, slower, melancholy songs. I would figure it's the
Right.
same kind of feeling for an anthology. You want something that's gonna be a little more darker and grittier, and
Mhm.
you want other ones that are a little more lighter, to take you out of the darkness ones, or then you have other ones that are kind of right in the middle. It's just that kind of that not tolerance. What do you call it? That spectrum, that
Yeah.
spectrum of themes. I don't know. I think well, when you talk about family and fearlessness,
Hmm.
to be fearless, it's something bad's got to happen. So you have
Exactly.
the opportunity to be fearless.
Uh-huh.
So to me, this makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the
Yeah.
great thing about the anthologies. Like, even if one or two of the stories doesn't grab you, there's probably something in there for everybody, whether you
Yeah.
prefer more lighthearted or a little more gritty, whatever you
Yeah.
like.
Well, no, I'm curious how you organize it too. So he says 10,000 words, which is pretty substantial.
Yeah.
How many pages is that about?
It's just over 300 pages total.
Oh, well, how about your
Yeah.
your story in
Oh,
general?
my story.
Yeah.
Yeah, my story in it is about 30.
Okay, okay. So yeah, that's pretty solid. Now, is it
Yeah.
separated at all into like different scenes and different like chapters of your story? Or is it all
Yeah,
just
my
one big chapter?
no, I definitely have seen breaks. I mean,
Okay.
it would be pretty lengthy to read nonstop for 30 pages. So I've got scene breaks, and most of the stories do as well.
Yeah, some authors do it though. I've got a couple that are just like, when does this end? I need to go
Oh my
use the
goodness.
restroom. I got my kids yelling at me. I gotta go feed the dog or something. You know what I mean? Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
I
that's no.
you need to have this. I find that what's funny is you think that you want the longer scenes because you get more detail, but if you do it right, you can make a short scene super impactful and have a
Mhm.
lot of information in a very truncated package. So if you do it right,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. In fact, one of my favorite parts of my story in particular is because there's a ticking time bomb, there's only 5 hours until we can
I
escape
like
kind
that
of
you
thing.
did
I
that.
have a couple like really short scenes and short sequence of like, there's 2 hours left and we're doing this. and it's just a couple lines, and then it's like, okay, we have an hour and 45 minutes left now, what are we doing? And it's just like a way of building the tension. So that was fun to experiment with really short scenes.
I bet. Now, how was the editing process for you? Did you have to cut out a lot? Did you have to add stuff when you wrote the story? Did you use your family to kind of help, flesh it out and trim down the fat, if you will?
Yeah, I actually was pretty good at staying around the word count of 10,000 words. So
That's
I
good.
wasn't, yeah, it wasn't horribly underwritten or overwritten like some of my classmates' experiences were, from what I hear. I did have my sister read through one of my earlier drafts because she's my best friend and I really value her feedback, even though she's not a writer herself.
Yeah.
And mostly I bounce ideas off of her for like what's working, what's not, because she's a very rationalistic thinker, and that's the kind of reader I kind of want to write for. So if something's just stupid or she doesn't like a character because they're being dumb, she'll tell me, and that's super valuable for me to know. Like, okay, cut the drama a little here, cut the whatever
Melodrama.
is going on. Yeah.
Well, and I do like that you like, well, you said it even here, you're living in a realistic, morality driven scenario. It's like, just because the antagonist, is fictional, but we're still dealing with real life consequences of time is now the enemy. We're now fighting these, whatever this is, this, like I said, sentient being or plants, which it would be kind of, especially on Pacific Northwest. Can you imagine? Rude. Go live in the desert at this point. Just saying.
Exactly.
Okay. The cactuses coming to life would be scary enough, but pine trees out here, they're 300 feet tall. Okay, not that tall, but you know what I mean.
Right.
Anyway, I'm not sure where I was going with that, but
exactly. And especially like as I came to develop it, a major theme that came out was depression. Like my protagonist deals with depression, which makes sense. I mean, this is a world-ending scenario and probably ties into COVID a lot. Like looking back on it, it's like, this is definitely me processing the pandemic, the isolation, the scary world out there. And so that was an extra thing where my sister was able to help. Like, okay, you've got a very rationalistic protagonist dealing with a lot of stuff in her head. Like, depression is not something you want to get wrong or portray as something like, oh, just believe in yourself and everything will go away. Like, no.
Flip the switch to the happy side of the switch and you'll be fine.
Exactly.
It doesn't work like that.
Right.
Yeah. And you don't find many apocalypses, at least, post-apocalyptic stories that are terribly light and enjoyable. There's usually a lot of, like you said, a darker element to it. So, and when you use post-apocalyptic or darn near apocalyptic at this point in time, because you're right on that precipice of the world going into basically falling into chaos. It sounds like it's already in chaos. It's just going to get worse from there. Let's add a nuclear winter to it. So let's make it's going to be a little depressing to a point. I mean, the whole world's ending and now she's out to save her brother. So and it sounds like there's more deep meaning that which is kind of cool. It's not just, it's layered. It has multi layers to it, which is kind of neat. It's just her, yes, she's saving her brother. She's got a time limit, which is kind of terrifying, but it sounds like she's learning something about her family as she's going down the road, which is kind of a nugget you don't really, I don't think, anticipate. You just think it's bare bones. They're going to go, it's a rescue mission. Like, no, there's actually more to it. It's more, there's a, nutty goodness at the very center of this story. That kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, again, where I think in a way I'm like processing the pandemic of, yes, there's big apocalyptic stuff going on, but I didn't want this to be the kind of story, especially in a short story, where it's like, they're going to save the whole world. Like, no, they're not. They're two kids. So I wanted to focus way more on how is this big stressor, world-ending stuff affecting one family, one 15-year-old, one 10-year-old? Like, how are they processing? How does that affect the way they relate to each other, the way they relate to their parents? Just, I wanted to zoom in real close on just one family.
A micro analysis, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you take it it's very realistic in your aim, right? I mean, I haven't read it in its entirety. I got the nice blurb here that you sent me, but it makes sense. And we all like those movies or stories that have like that FBI agent who is the top of their class and has got all the resources and blah blah blah, the hero. Yeah, those are fun to watch, but when you think of like actually connecting with characters, what can we do if something terrible were to happen, an apocalypse or something, poor bad weather, or COVID, something like that,
Yeah.
were to go on a crisis, how would it affect the individual or the individual family? To me, that's more realistic. To me, that's your readers are going to be able to actually relate to this person versus this, unattainably powerful or intelligent, skillful individual who is completely made up. So it's nice that you're taking it down to as real as possible. It's already a stretch enough to have, it's fantasy, science fiction, sentient plants at the moment, but we can take everything else and make it as real as possible. I mean, look at other post-apocalyptic stuff with zombies and things like that. So the dead walking, that's absurd, but people dealing with tragedy, that's real. So I think
Exactly.
it sounds like exactly what you were aiming at.
Yeah, I think a good comp title, if you will, for my story would be A Quiet Place. I love how that movie, the family, they're not saving the world. They're not
No.
defeating all the aliens once and for all. It's one family surviving a terrible situation. And I think that really grabbed a lot of people. And I wanted to go for that same vibe.
Well, if they can see themselves in that position, they go, how would I react to this? That's the thing. That's why I'm gonna go back to zombie movies and stuff. That's why people like, well, how would we prepare? How would we prepare? Or the power going down, how would we prepare? And that's why a lot of people can relate to those or put themselves in that particular situation. And I think yours would be a very similar one. How would I deal with, okay, would I go down to these streets that don't have plants on them, or do I have to carry around flamethrowers? I don't know. You know what I mean? I'm just spitballing here. But it's pretty interesting. Now, did you have to ruminate on that idea of savage plants for a long time, or did you it just pop in your head after you saw that sign? You're like, I gotta write this down. I gotta play with this.
I think it ruminated for a while. Like I'd known about this nursery for a while, and it didn't immediately pop into my head that I've got to write about this. So I'm not exactly sure what it was about this particular short story. It's like, yeah, let's add it in there. But yeah.
Okay, cool. Unknown amount of time. Yeah, and that's always funny with story inspiration. It's either like exactly what did it, or it's over this long period of time that eroded away to the point where you're like, I need to write this.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so you talked real quick about, or briefly, I want to pull the pin out now for a solo story that you have. You're a novella that we talked about quite a while ago that you want to eventually make into a novel. Are you going to be working on this soon, or are you going to kind of let the anthology, ride this anthology out for a little while and then tackle your other story?
I'm hoping to work on this other story at the same time. Like I definitely want to sit down pretty soon and figure out how am I going to keep pushing this anthology in 2024. But at the same time, I want to be working on something new. So I had set my novella aside for about a year already. And so I think that was plenty of time to let things sit, germinate. I have some ideas for expanding it. So I'm excited to get back into that world.
Oh, cool. What kind of world are we getting into with that story? Is it similar to what you wrote, or is it completely different?
Well, it's similar in that it's still science fiction, but a bit different. It's actually a sci-fi mystery this time, and it's more set in futuristic Seattle, more about robots rather than killer plants. And so I think it could go for some of those darker, creepier vibes as well, but probably not to the same extent because it's not an apocalyptic, world-ending kind of thing.
Okay. Futuristic, not post-apocalyptic.
Exactly.
Okay. Any influence from Isaac Asimov or anything like that? Those.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I saw the movie I, Robot long before I read the short story collection, and I really enjoy both. They're very different, but I enjoy both in their own kinds of ways. And I think I was, especially in the movie, I liked that sort of protagonist who just hates robots. I kind of adopted that again, someone in a sci-fi universe who doesn't quite like living in a sci-fi universe. It's just a fun contrast to play with.
I feel like I can kind of relate with Will Smith's character in that, I'm very adverse to new technology. For example, Bluetooth has been around for a long time now. I mean,
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
say since I was in high school, we had the very beginning of it. When you're walking around and you see someone talking to themselves, you're like, that guy's crazy.
Uh-huh.
Oh, he's wearing a suit. He's probably got Bluetooth. Okay,
Yeah,
that makes sense. When you
yeah.
first see it, you don't know. I
Mhm.
think I just like in the last maybe year, like gave Bluetooth a chance. It took me like 15 years.
Really?
I'm
Okay.
one of those people. And I
Okay.
love it. It's like, oh, this is great. So I
Yeah,
would I
yeah.
would probably be this guy. Robots, no. If it's not breathing on its own, I don't want to deal with it. I think
Exactly.
it'd be very similar, but
Yeah.
that's interesting. So yeah, so jumping on that pretty quick. That's going to be awesome. Expanding on it. Do you have other stories in mind you want to do, or after this you just kind of see what happens?
I have several ideas spinning around. I'm not really sure which one to pick to work on next.
Yeah.
Most of them in sci-fi, a few of them in fantasy. So I
Cool.
should probably ride the sci-fi train for a while, I feel like, before it's starting to dabble more in fantasy. But
Other
I've
genres,
got
yeah.
ideas for both, yeah.
Yeah. Would you ever do another anthology again after this one?
I would love to. This was a really fun opportunity to collaborate with other writers, and it's fun to market an anthology. It's very different from a novel because you get to
Yeah.
spotlight other people, and it doesn't feel like you're promoting yourself all the time. It's like my friend wrote this amazing story, and you should read it for that reason. And so it was super fun. I'd love to do this again.
That's a really good point. I don't know how you feel about promoting yourself. I personally hate promoting myself. It's
Mm,
not something I enjoy. That's one reason why I like doing the podcast, because I can go, hey, look at this person, the cool things they're doing. That's just way more fun to me. So it is interesting that you do that you have this kind of same mentality about your anthology, because where yeah, you benefit a little bit, but you're also pushing towards, your friends and other writers who've done a good job with their stories as well.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
think this first publication experience for me is going to be super helpful for me promoting solo novels down the road if I get to that point, because now I'm getting a taste of what readers like about my writing in general. And so I can probably take that of like, okay, if you enjoy this kind of thing, and it's more like I'm promoting the book more so than myself, of
Hmm.
like, hey, I know you like this kind of thing, so here you go, here's another one.
Yeah. Now, so for actually selling the book, are each of you given a certain amount of physical copies to sell on your own, or are they all exclusively like go to the link and purchase? Like that, I'm just curious how that would work.
Yeah, so we do have one collective link on Amazon, and that's the only place where you can get an ebook. But as far as paperbacks go, we each have our own separate links so that we can
Oh,
track our
okay.
separate pre-orders. So yeah, we all got different numbers of pre-orders and we ordered
Cool.
more books. And so there's some, leeway given for each of us experimenting with different marketing tactics. And there's a certain portion that of about 10% of all our proceeds go to a general fund that kind of gets split among all of us. But
Oh, cool. Okay.
yeah, the most part, like every sale I make goes straight to me, which is great.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, if you can have that general fund, because I assume that's going to go to, oh, well, you said it goes to all the other authors. I was curious how if that was went to the the school that you work with. I can't remember the author. What was it called?
The
The
author conservatory.
conservatory. I want to say consortium, but that's not the right word.
A friend of
Conservatory.
mine keeps saying consortium as well.
Oh
So
yeah.
I
Okay.
guess it's
We're in the same boat
confusing.
then.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, yeah, I'm actually not 100% sure on how that works because it's like, wait, if a portion of mine goes to a fund that can split between all of us, don't I get the same money back? Like, I don't know how that works. I
No.
assume it all goes to us. And if it doesn't all go to the 9 authors, then it probably goes to a fund saved for future students. Definitely the conservatory itself is not making a ton of money off this. They really are focused on promoting us upcoming authors.
Yeah, no, whenever you do an anthology, honestly, you do any kind of fiction writing at all, the likelihood of earning much money is pretty low.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, why people write stories because we love stories. We're not in the business of writing books for the business of it. We're in it for the
Exactly.
joy of creating good stories and entertaining people, or in some fashion, some instance, I've talked to a lot of people who've written stories for themselves or family members
Mm.
for healing and
Yeah,
other things as well. So if you don't love doing it, there's no point in getting the business. But that's just
exactly.
kind of a thing. If you start writing and you start wanting to, get books out there, it's nice to know the business a little bit. So it can't
Yeah.
hurt.
Yeah. It's nice to be able to stay in the game,
Mhm.
basically. Like,
Yeah.
we were just learning some statistics about how little of the market of publishers' budgets go toward marketing. And so,
Yes.
really, if authors want to sell copies, it's basically based on their own skills in marketing. And you
Yes.
can think of it as like not so much them trying to earn a bunch of money, because again, if you're trying to earn money, you're probably in the wrong business if you're a writer.
Yeah.
But it's more about I want to show publishers that there is an audience for my book. They like what I'm doing. And so giving themselves a second chance to write another book
Yeah.
and be able to provide more stories to their audience. I think that's what it mainly comes down to.
Yeah, it's crazy how the evolution of the publisher has changed with the responsibility of marketing. I know I've said it before on here where, back in the day it was you comb through all these manuscripts of authors doing their thing. They pick 1% of the manuscripts, and once they do, then they just throw a bunch of money into marketing. Nowadays,
Yeah.
marketing's not as big. I want to say, it's still big, but they're not advertising as much
Right.
because we have social media has made it so obvious for people to, or able to people put it in front of you. I think that's probably got to change. That's had to change a few things, but I don't know when the switch happened where it basically became the author's responsibility
Right.
to market. I'm not sure when that happened, but
I don't know
it can be
either.
very challenging though.
Mm.
Marketing is extremely challenging. Now, for the conservatory, said it right this time. The conservatory, do they actually teach you marketing strategies and
Yeah, they do.
all that?
That's the
Yeah,
cool thing
tactics.
about Author Conservatory. It's not just a writing program, it also gives you business coaching.
That's so
So
cool.
we have a lot of instructors who aren't writers at all. They just know business, they know how to market. And
Yeah,
so we get to learn both of those things. Like a lot of us have started our own pop-up businesses that are completely
yeah.
unrelated to writing. Some people clean houses or dog sit or more complex things. Like I personally am a proofreader, freelance proofreader.
Oh, cool.
So we get to build income on different jobs and learn how to market those jobs and become more independent that way. And it's been a good for me, especially like I pay the bills basically via my proofreading. And then because that's all on my own time, I get to, decide my own schedule. And so I can set aside whatever time I want to work on my writing as well. It works out really nice.
That is really cool. I wish that public schools would incorporate more realistic classes or skills like you're learning at the conservatory. I really
Mm-hmm.
wish they would incorporate that more. I mean, hands-on, real life, honest to goodness skill sets and strategies so kids and young adults can learn how to be successful in today's market. Because when I was in school, they had business and marketing, but it was not, and like they had like minor finance classes,
Uh-huh.
but my goodness, they did not really push those. And then you get out into the real world, and I mean, this is we have a checkbook and everything's via paper, everything's digital now.
Mm-hmm.
But I really wish they would have pushed those harder because nowadays where so many people are entrepreneurs or have a side thing.
Right.
How are you going to be successful? Well, navigating this huge thing called marketing it's such huge, it's like a psychology you put into it.
Mm-hmm.
There's minor ads you can do to tweak and how people can like you as a human. You have to connect as a human being before you can actually sell your product, like that kind of thing you wouldn't have known until you got into it. And it's very refreshing, I'll say, to have a group of people and professionals working with coaching other people who want to become professionals. To me, that's a very healthy thing to do, and I love that they are around to do that. So I'm very excited for you guys in the conservatory. So that's what I'm saying, Ed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So very, very cool. So you said you do proofreading, which is really cool.
Mhm.
How long have you been doing that for?
About since I graduated college again 2020, but it really picked up this year to the point where it could be my full-time income. And
No
that
way.
was mostly based on my own marketing efforts, how much I put
Oh
into
yeah.
it.
Yes. Yeah. You get out what you put into it, is what I found.
Exactly.
So what kind of marketing are you doing for your proofreading?
I'm mostly in personal referral, cold call stage still, which has worked surprisingly well. I tend to work mostly with publishers rather than individual authors. So I'm on, contract basis with a few different publishers where whenever they need an extra proofreader, they reach out to me and it works out that way. So it's still pretty new, like less than a year old that I've really been doing this a lot. So I'm still learning the kind of seasonal aspect of the job. Like I had nonstop work from March to August, and then things kind of dropped off. So that was interesting for me to see. I wouldn't have expected the publishing world to be seasonal, but it's like, okay, I will have to see if this is the pattern in future years or if this year is
Yeah.
just weird.
I wonder if that's because you got to think authors and writers are writing stuff during the, at least from Pacific Northwest side, the really crummy weather months.
Uh-huh.
And then, they get their stuff around that March time frame. And then through March through August, it's all the people who I don't know. I'm just thinking like I always think weather has to do something with how we do
Maybe.
stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
I
I
don't know.
wondered if it was like, around this time, everyone's taking breaks for the holiday season. And if
Too,
that's
yeah.
why, like, I don't know.
I
We'll
don't
we'll
know.
see.
That's interesting. Cool. Well,
Yeah.
that's really great. I love that. Yeah, I've always
Mhm.
been interested in proofreading and how you make it like editors are blow me away with how much knowledge they have and how they help people communicate better. It's just insane. So for proofreading, it's just basic grammar and spelling and
Yeah.
format, or are you doing continuity as well?
Somewhat format. I don't do a whole lot of continuity. Like I'm not a line editor, so I'm not like rewriting sentences. Usually I'm just
Okay.
making sure. Oh, depending on what the publisher wants. Sometimes it's just catch the typos. Sometimes it's insert the typesetting tags. It kind of varies.
Okay.
But I like that I'm in the lower stages as opposed to developmental editing because, I'm doing enough right brain stuff with writing my own stories. So it's nice to have a more left brain. This comma's in the wrong spot for my day job.
Well, that makes sense. So, what do you have to do to become a proofreader? Do you have to go through a school? Did you have to get, you got a degree in creative writing, so that probably helped.
Yeah.
Did you have to get a certificate? I mean, what do you have to do to say, yes, I am a freelance proofreader, excuse me.
Yeah, for freelancing, you don't really need a certificate or education, that kind of thing, though it definitely does help. Like
Mhm.
several proofreaders I know have had different paths. In my case, me being in university really opened the door because my first job was working with a professor from my alma mater whose English was her second language. So I worked with her not just on like class materials, but also on like really complicated stuff, like her dissertation she was writing at
Oh,
the same
shoot.
time. Yeah, that was was an intense first job, but it worked out.
Yeah,
So, and we worked great together. So, in
great.
my case, that really opened the doors of like, if I can tackle a dissertation on ancient Greek and stuff, like I could probably read through a standard, nonfiction, something on whatever it is I work on. I mostly
Yeah.
do nonfiction, but a
Oh,
few
okay.
fiction as well.
Yeah, I kind of actually like proofreading nonfiction for some reason. I think it's just I don't know. It's just simpler. There's just doesn't seem to be as many rules. At the same time, there are. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. I think it's
Yeah,
because for fiction, you're world building, and so you do things a little differently to some degree. I think I'm still thinking like line editing, continuity, not necessarily grammar. You know what I'm talking about?
yeah. And
Yeah.
again, for me, I like the left brain aspect of proofreading. So it's easier to do that in nonfiction because with fiction, sometimes you take more you're more lax about the rules of like, oh, we're not actually going to follow this because of the
True.
stylistic thing. And so it takes a little bit more creative thinking to be able to catch that, oh, this is part of the style. I'm not going to change that. Whereas nonfiction is just way more by the book. And so I kind of prefer that.
Yeah, that's a true statement. I was in a class for my apprenticeship out here, and we had to go through English because we have to write emails and whatever at the shipyard and everything. So
Yeah.
I was pretty I was pretty on it with writing at this point because I think in the midst of getting my first book out. Anyway, we took this English class, very bare bones, based not even I can't even categorize it as like English 101. They had to run you through these regardless of what skill set you had or what shop or
Yeah.
trade you were going into. Anyway, it was basically teaching all the grammar rules, when to use there, and there, that kind of stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
really, for us, that's like super easy. That's like putting a
Mhm.
period at the end of the sentence. Well, duh.
Uh-huh.
Really, really basic stuff. Well, what was funny was we were having these online tests we were having to do, and a lot of people were not doing very well. To the
Mm.
point where, yeah, it was just they were not doing great. And so we were having problems with learning all these rules after going through and really studying to make sure we got it a good scores. She
Mhm.
said this one thing that basically just like everyone just turned their brains off after this. She goes, you can grammar is 100% important until you decide you're doing it for creative writing. I'm like,
Mm.
what? You don't have to. I could turn off all the grammar and it's in the theme of creative writing. I'm like, so you're telling me that none of this is important? That's cool. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
weird. I mean,
it
even
is
with
weird.
creative writing, you have to know the rules in order to
You
break
do.
them well. So
Yeah.
it's always important.
Yeah, it was a bit of an oversimplification that the a lot of the guys came to, but
Yeah.
they were so done with that English class. I don't blame them. Like, oh, we can just throw out the rules and in response to creative writing. Like, okay,
No.
I'm still gonna correct your terrible punctuation, guys. It's just how it's.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, that's cool that you're doing that and you're making good strides because that's it's hard to make a living as an entrepreneur, and it's a beautiful thing that you're doing it alongside of your passion of writing stories, and you get to
Mhm.
do proofreading, so you kind of get to see you keep those skills sharpened almost at all times, which is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that. So you were talking about, big old projects. You did this. I wanted to hear a little bit about your little honors thesis that you did. What that it's been still getting a lot of attention, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
What-
weird. I get email updates like every month, like another 200 people looked at it. I'm like, oh,
Wow,
wow.
that's
Okay.
great.
So I was
That's
part of
great.
the honors program in university,
Yeah.
which meant I had to close out my senior year with a thesis of some kind. And most theses, especially in the English realm, were consisted of like a 40-page essay or so. And mine was 96 pages. And that was during COVID. So yeah, I don't know. I
Way
had
to
nothing better
go.
to do, I guess, with my life. But it was a lot of work, but I was really proud of it. Yeah, I've always been passionate about the portrayal of female characters in fantasy, science fiction, and really literature in general. And so it was kind of fun for me to look at very common female characters like Hermione Granger.
Oh,
Who else
cool.
was there? Susan Pevensey from Narnia, Princess
Oh,
Buttercup, actually,
wow.
from The Princess Bride. That was fun.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
yeah, so it's kind of like satisfying the nerd part of me while also like digging deep into contrasting their book presentations to their movie presentations and just seeing, okay, what changes were made? Were they good changes that really brought out the strengths of this female character? Were they not so good changes? And yeah, in a way, I still remember that kind of thing that I went through when I write my own stories, because I
Sure.
definitely prefer writing female protagonists and even stories where most of the characters are female. So I take a lot of this seriously. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I have the same kind of um, you know, thing as well because like proclivities, I guess, with like I like to write mostly male characters because, well,
Mhm.
I'm a guy, I have
Yeah.
that background. Me bringing female characters, I have to be conscious of how a woman would tackle a situation. So,
Mhm.
like, I'll look to my wife or my sisters or my mother going, hey, if this happened, what's the first thing you'd think of? Well, I think of this. Well, I was wrong, and I have to go back and I have to undo things and then change it and go. So what I was curious about your study, did you analyze like probably really hard to do? Did you analyze like a male's take on a female character versus a female author on a female character? Did you ever take a look at that at all? I don't know how you'd analyze it, but You know what I mean?
A little bit. Again, I was mostly looking at specific characters, but
Sure.
out of all the characters I looked at, only one of them, Hermione, was a female character written by a female author. Like the
Mhm.
rest of them were female characters written by male authors.
Right.
And then in the movie world, I think it was only I did Arwen from Lord of the Rings,
Oh,
and
cool.
she was the only character who was written by female screenwriters. Like in all the other
Oh,
cases, all the
okay.
screenwriters were male. So
That's another factor too. I didn't think about the
yeah,
screenwriters and the writers. I would imagine movies are easier to get the female portrayal right because it's a team effort and you're actually working with live people. And you know what I mean? Their mantras, their characteristics are gonna already come through as more feminine if they are a female versus
yeah. There's
someone writing it. I don't know. I don't know.
it's kind of yes and no. I mean, the strength
Yeah.
of movies is that you usually at least have women portraying women and the
Right.
actresses. So
That's
yeah,
what I
you
figured.
get the more female mannerisms and that kind of thing. But also definitely in the movie business,
Mhm.
there are far more male directors, male screenwriters, more so than in the author world. So
Yeah.
there's also that sense of if a character was written unrealistically or written just so she could be the sexy love interest, then
Right.
you still have that same this could be better.
Oh, yeah. There's got to be more depth to that. Like, I'm trying to think
Exactly.
of which author. It was a science fiction guy. You might know him. He did Starship Troopers.
Not familiar with that one.
I'm gonna look him up real fast because it's gonna kill me if I don't.
Sure.
Yeah, because it was originally a movie by Robert Heinlein. That's right, or a show, not a show. Oh my gosh, a book by Robert Heinlein. And I had a buddy of mine who is super into sci-fi. He loves sci-fi and everything sci-fi-esque. I mean, he devours books, and
Mhm.
he's read all the Isaac Asimov, Stephen Heinlein, all them. But he
Yeah.
said his portrayal of female characters was just terrible. Like
Mm.
just not good. It never was the most unappealing stereotypes. He,
Yeah.
he would do that in not the most, but several of them. He would do that in a couple of his books, especially Starship Troopers. Heinlein was one that just did not do a good job with portraying women very well. It was just they're there, they're an
Mhm.
accessory. It's like, no, they're not accessory to the hero. You,
Yeah, science fiction in
there's
general didn't have the greatest portrayals of female characters from very early on. And I think
yeah,
things are better today. You get a little more
absolutely.
variety. It's more common to
Hmm.
have female protagonists or
Oh
female
heck yeah.
science fiction writers, still probably more heavily a male centric genre. And
Hmm.
nothing wrong with that. But I
No.
like writing science fiction that features more women in it. Probably
Mhm.
because I grew up with four sisters, and so my
Oh
growing
yeah.
up world was like surrounded by women. It's like this is my normal, so why
Yeah.
can't I write that normal in my stories?
Well, I think it's better if you do write your normal in your stories because it's more genuine anyway, and then it's more
Exactly.
relatable. I mean, then you get to the funny nitty gritty details of your day to day life with you and your sisters.
Hmm.
Because you can take those weird quirks of you two having arguments, you two getting along, chatting about things you want to talk about,
Yeah.
their mannerisms, your mannerisms, the different quirks you guys have. You put that in a story, it's gonna again we're circling back to more relatable.
Hmm.
People will be able to, like, oh my gosh, my sister and I did the same thing,
Right.
and it's like, oh, this person's a pain like my sister was a pain. You know what I mean? It's just
Uh-huh.
fun. They can really dive in and hone in on that kind of relationship, so they can see themselves in the characters or in the characters world. I mean, you're doing a good job with that. So all that is great, great. This is a great experience. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure I already know the answer to this, but your family supporting your career, are they pretty excited for you?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I send all my first drafts to my sister to read. She's very supportive. And when I say my sister, I have four, but like
Yeah.
the one I live with, my best friend, like
Oh, okay,
she's the
cool.
one who gets to read everything first. And a couple of my sisters in North Carolina, so they weren't able to show up for my launch party. But when that happened, my sisters who were here came, my parents came. They actually helped set a lot of it up. Like it's actually my dad's idea that okay, your story ends with the characters hunkered down in a bunker. What if that was the theme of the party? Like were hunkered in a bunker.
Mhm.
And so now there's nothing to do except play board games and do puzzles and eat snacks. And it's like that's amazing. And so that's what we did. It was mostly a board game night. And it was super, super fun.
That's cool. That's a good idea. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Now, in the line of your sisters, where do you fall? Oldest, youngest, middle? Where are you at?
I am the third out of six. I actually have one brother. He's the youngest.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
You guys just
yeah.
overwhelm him.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Or is he
He's
just
doing
really
fine. So
Oh, okay. He's either really quiet or really badly behaved.
exactly. We're like, I don't know how he's going to turn out, but it's going to be one or the other.
Yeah, yeah. How old is he?
He's 19, so he's
Okay.
the last one in college now.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
He's not a baby anymore. There you go.
No, that's a little sad, but I had a little brother in my story, so I guess I sort of based it off of him.
There you go. That's true. You could say like he ran away. He's a problem child. You were a problem child. Just really give him all the cred. You
Yeah,
got to do that with your siblings.
yeah. He hasn't read the story yet, so I wonder what he'll think of it.
Oh, you should throw it at him. Like, hey, read this.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Try to get all your siblings. Has all your siblings read it or just a couple?
Probably only one of them, the one who's read the early version. Like
Sure.
everybody else ordered their own copies. It's just I don't think most of them had time to read it yet,
Yeah.
which is fair.
Yeah, no,
So.
that's totally a thing.
We'll
All right,
see.
well, so let's talk about how to actually get copies of your book. So
Yeah.
where can we get copies of the anthology and follow you online and look out for future titles that you'll be publishing in the future?
Yeah, so the book in general is available on Amazon, and that is where you can get the ebook version. But if you're interested in a paperback, especially a signed paperback by me or any of my fellow authors, we all have separate links for pre-ordering. Well, I guess it won't be pre-order anymore because it's out. But we all have separate links where you can order specifically from me or any of the other authors, and those links are on the Author Conservatory website, and we'll have those linked below. And that's where you can get a copy that's specifically signed by me, or just if you want to support me in general, like the money goes straight to me in that way. So
That's good. Yeah, so guys, if you want to actually get the link, you have to be on the YouTube platform. On the description there, you'll find the link there. And then I can also put it in my announcement on the Mighty Books Podcast Facebook page. That way it's right there along with the download to this interview. So people can get not only the book, but can listen to our conversation, which I think would be, nice and efficient.
Great.
Good and efficient. It'll be think kind of cool. I don't know if you guys have done this yet or not, but as a gift to the conservatory, you have everyone sign a copy or one copy. Everyone signs that. I know kind of hard from Scotland for one person over there, but it'd be kind of cool if they had that. So
we have sent each other book plates, so probably there are a few copies out there with everybody's signed.
That would be really cool. Yeah, I guess you can do that too, can't you? I think it's kind of cool. Like that's real ink. Really cool. But anyway, random thought. So awesome, Valerie. This has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming on here. I'm glad we could finally connect. So it's been a long time in the making, and I'm glad you're making wonderful strides in getting your work out there. And so congratulations on the anthology, and good luck with everything coming on your way.
Thanks. This was enjoyable. I'm glad you had me.
All right, guys, please go check her out. Go check the anthology out. So it not only has her and her works, but you said 8 other authors as well. That's super cool. What a great way to sample someone's writing, especially when they're pretty new into the game. And then you can kind of, put them in your list to be on the lookout for other great stories coming by them in the future. So, yes, I really hope you guys enjoyed this. As always, go check her out. Please support her and her endeavors, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. And as always, stay mighty and keep reading. Are you an author? Do you know someone who is? If so, then message me, Ryan Oliver, at ryanmoliver.com to set up a free appointment to discuss being showcased on the Mighty Books Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the Mighty Books YouTube channel and share the link to this and more episodes with your friends and family. Thanks for listening. So long for now. Stay mighty and keep reading.